The deep forests of Maine had always been shrouded in mystery. But that night, the woods felt different. A storm had just passed, and everyone from the nearby coastal town of Port Haven chose to stay indoors. The town, nestled by the sea, was eerily quiet, save for the howling wind and the rustling of trees. A thick fog blanketed everything, swallowing the world into an impenetrable darkness. Jack and Emma, close friends, decided to explore the abandoned old mansion on the outskirts of town. Emma was adventurous, always eager to uncover new places and delve into the town's legendary and chilling past. Jack, on the other hand, was cautious, fearful even, and always tried to think things through. But he couldn't resist Emma's persistence and reluctantly agreed to accompany her. "There's something about this place, Jack," Emma whispered. "The townsfolk left it alone for a reason. They say it's cursed." Jack smirked at her words. "Stories are just stories," he replied, though deep down, a part of him wasn't so sure. It didn't take them long to reach the mansion. The decrepit building loomed ominously in the faint light, shrouded in the dense fog. The door was slightly ajar, its rusty hinges creaking faintly, as if inviting them in. A cold draft seeped out, mingling with the darkness, carrying a foreboding sense of dread. "Should we go in?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with excitement. Jack hesitated for a few seconds before nodding. "All right, but let's be careful. This place could be dangerous." They pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was heavy with the scent of abandonment. The walls were covered in moss, and every step they took on the wooden floors elicited a sharp creak. The silence was palpable. The fog seemed to have infiltrated the mansion itself, clinging to every corner and suffocating the space. Suddenly, a faint wailing sound broke the stillness, coming from somewhere deep within the house. "Did you hear that?" Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jack strained his ears but heard nothing. It was hard to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. Taking a deep breath, they pressed forward, the creaking floorboards beneath their feet sounding like whispers in the oppressive quiet. Then a scream pierced the air. They froze, their hearts pounding. The scream wasn't close. It seemed to come from the basement below. This can't be happening," Jack muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma, though momentarily frightened, was overcome by her curiosity. "We need to check it out," she said, her determination unshaken. The two of them hurried toward the basement. The old, rickety staircase leading down was steep and ominous. The screams grew louder, more distinct, as if pulling them closer. In that moment, they felt an inexplicable dread and awareness that the sounds were not of human origin, but something older, darker. This house had a grim history. Years ago, a family had vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but whispers of sinister deeds. They opened the basement door to find a space shrouded in darkness, the air stale and oppressive. Breathing was almost impossible. Suddenly, old writing appeared on the wall. "Turn back, or you'll be lost forever." The letters seemed to be written in blood. A heavy silence followed, pressing down on them like a weight. Then, from the depths of the basement, a figure emerged. Slowly, its silhouette became clearer. It was a child, lifeless and pale, slowly advancing toward them. Its eyes were black voids, and its mouth dripped with blood. Its body convulsed unnaturally, emitting low, guttural moans. It's a ghost," Emma whispered, her eyes wide with terror. Jack couldn't even muster the courage to step back. "This is a trap," he murmured. "We need to get out of here now," but it was already too late. A voice echoed from the walls, a soulless, otherworldly sound that seemed to transcend time and space. The house itself felt alive, its essence consuming them. Jack and Emma clung to each other, paralyzed with fear. At that moment, the basement door slammed shut, the fog outside thickened, and everything faded into darkness. From that night onward, the townsfolk refused to speak of what had happened. No one dared to go near the old mansion again, for the darkest secret of Port Haven returned every night, shrouded in the ever-present fog. In one of the remote villages of western Texas, people often spoke about an abandoned mansion far away from the town. For decades, no one had lived there. The townsfolk believed the house was cursed, and anyone who ventured near it never returned. Yet, to city-born teenagers, such stories were little more than a test of courage and curiosity. Jake, Lily, and Chris were newcomers to the town. One evening, while they gathered in the town square, they overheard a group of local teens discussing the mansion. "Have you heard about the place?" Matt, the town's daring troublemaker, asked. "Weird stuff happens in there. No one's got the guts to go inside, or if they do, they don't come back." Jake smirked. "It's just an old house, isn't it?" he said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Lily, cautious as always, hesitated, but she could feel the weight of the challenge. Chris, the leader of the group, quickly made the decision for all of them. "Let's go," he said confidently. "We can't believe everything we hear. Let's see for ourselves." That night, the three friends set off for the mansion. Fog wrapped around the town like a suffocating blanket, and as they ventured into the dense woods surrounding the house, a strange tension filled the air. After what felt like hours, they reached the ominous structure. The mansion loomed before them, its walls overgrown with moss and ivy, its shattered windows like empty eyes. The door hung crookedly on rusted hinges, threatening to fall at the slightest touch. "Do we really have to go in?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "This place is giving me chills." Jake, always the daring one, took a bold step forward. "We've come this far," he said. "Let's check it out." With a creak, the old door swung open, and they stepped inside. The air was thick and heavy, carrying the musty scent of abandonment. The floorboards groaned beneath their feet, and fog seemed to seep through every crack, curling around the corners like an unwelcome guest. Cobwebs hung like curtains from the ceiling, and dust coated the remnants of old furniture. In one corner of the room stood a tarnished candelabra, and on the floor, strange symbols were etched into the wood. "This is creepy," Chris muttered, scanning the room. "This isn't just an abandoned house. It feels like something happened here. Something dark." Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the mansion, freezing them in place. The sound seemed to come from deep within the house. What was that?" Lily whispered, clutching Jake's arm. Before anyone could answer, words began to appear on the wall, as if scrawled by an invisible hand. The message, seemingly written in blood, read, "You'll die here before you leave." The trio took a collective step back, but before they could retreat, a gust of icy wind slammed the door shut behind them, trapping them inside. The wind pushed them toward a dark corridor. The air grew colder, heavier. Shadows danced along the walls, and suddenly, a figure emerged. It was a decayed, almost skeletal silhouette, moving with an unnatural, jerky gait. Its hollow eyes seemed to bore into their very souls, and its frail, shivering body emitted a low, guttural moan. What is that?" Jake stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. The figure moved closer, its eerie presence suffocating. "This isn't real." "It can't be real," Lily said, her voice shaking. "We need to get out of here now." But Chris, ever the brave one, stepped forward, drawn by a strange pull. "There's something here," he said. "We can't leave until we figure out what it is." As they ventured deeper into the mansion, the echoes grew louder. Each room seemed alive with whispers, the walls vibrating with unseen energy. Glowing eyes appeared in the shadows, watching their every move. Then, without warning, a deafening crash filled the air. Chris stumbled and fell to the floor. "Chris!" Jake and Lily cried out, rushing to his side. But before they could reach him, the walls seemed to close in, trapping them all. Figures began to emerge from the decayed wood, shadowy forms with hollow eyes and twisted limbs. The mansion came alive with screams and wails, and the trio disappeared into its dark depths. The townsfolk never saw them again. No one dared to speak of that night, and every evening, as the fog rolled in, a single light flickered in the mansion's window. Faint whispers and moans could be heard from the forest's edge. The villagers stayed far away, knowing that the cursed house would never let anyone go. In the quiet town of New Hampshire, nestled in the northeastern United States, there was a place the townspeople had spoken about for years, Hollowbrook Manor. Abandoned and unused for decades, the old mansion sat surrounded by dense woods that became eerily unsettling as darkness fell. The locals believed the house was cursed. But for four close friends, the stories were nothing more than a challenge. One day, in broad daylight, they decided to brave the mansion. Josh, Emily, Jack, and Sarah had been friends since high school, a bold group that thrived on thrill-seeking adventures. One weekend, while chatting about the recent forest explorations near the town, Emily grinned and said, "Let's check out that old mansion. Nothing bad can happen during the day, right?" Josh, always the leader and the bravest of the group, nodded with a smile. "We're looking for excitement, aren't we? Let's go see it. No one's been there in ages. It's time someone did." The others hesitated momentarily, but eventually gave in. A few hours later, on a crisp, sunny morning, the four friends set out toward the mansion, hidden deep in the woods on the outskirts of town. The entrance, framed by old stone walls, carried an air of forgotten times. Though the weather was clear, a chilling breeze swept through the area. As they approached the mansion, they kept the townsfolk's warnings in mind and moved cautiously. But Emily dismissed the unease. "No one's ever seen anything living here. It's just old stories. Nothing to worry about," she said. The mansion's large front door creaked open as they pushed it. Inside, it was a mess. High ceilings, crumbling stone walls, and broken-down furniture painted the picture of a place long abandoned. Despite the disarray, nothing felt particularly menacing. Sunlight streaming through the windows made everything seem less intimidating. "This place is ancient," Jack exclaimed as he examined the weathered walls. "But it's surprisingly sturdy." Sarah wandered toward the staircase leading upstairs. "Hey, there's something up here. Come look," she called out. At the top of the stairs was an old nursery. Inside, strange symbols and markings covered the walls. "What do you think these mean?" she asked, her voice laced with unease. Josh joined her, inspecting the symbols closely. "These look like something written in an old language. It feels like a warning," he murmured. "But I can't figure out the full meaning." Suddenly, an eerie silence filled the mansion. Everyone felt a wave of unease wash over them. Emily moved toward the corner of the room, holding her phone, when it suddenly vibrated violently. A chilling message appeared on the screen. "You'll die before you leave." "What the?" Emily stammered, dropping her phone in shock. "How is this even possible?" Double quotes dotted T. That moment, a cold wind swept through the room. The four friends huddled together, their breath visible in the frigid air. Jack noticed an old door hidden behind a wall panel. Slowly, He pushed it open, revealing a pitch-black corridor. A strange rushing sound, like a distant river, emanated from within. "We have to see what's in there," Josh said, determined. "This place feels cursed, but we can't just turn back now." Double quotes. As they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them. The room filled with low, whispering voices that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The whispers grew louder, almost human, but disturbingly distorted. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure began to emerge, a ghostly silhouette with a pale, decaying face. "This can't be real," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Above them, a shadowy form moved across the ceiling. Without warning, it dropped to the ground, a spectral figure of a child who had once lived in the mansion. Emily screamed and tried to move back, but the door wouldn't budge. "They were trapped. We have to do something," Jack shouted. "We need to get out of here." But there was no escape. The entity moved closer, and the air grew colder. The group could feel the icy breath of spirits long lost to this cursed place. Every corner of the room seemed alive, eyes glowing from the darkness and hands reaching out to grab them. "This place is a trap," Josh said, his voice shaking. "We have to find a way out." With a desperate burst of strength, Emily managed to kick open the door. They bolted toward the light, the sounds of ghostly wails echoing behind them. As they reached the mansion's entrance, the door slammed shut with a deafening thud, and a final, bone-chilling scream rang out, breathless and shaken. The four friends returned to town, vowing never to go back. They had realized something. The townsfolk's warnings were not just old tales. Hollowbrook Manor was home to a darkness, a lingering shadow of the past that refused to rest, and every night, as the townspeople avoided the mansion, they would see a faint light flicker inside and hear the whispers of those who still remain. Everyone knew one thing for certain: the house wasn't empty. It never would be.